Hello, BookTube. I have a bunch of new arrivals I want to waffle on about with you. Just the typical bombardment of books that has come to be synonymous with this channel. These are no particular, theme or rationale. These are new books, either new in paperback or immediately forthcoming. And I thought we'd just go through them. I think there are only a couple that are for the spring. Most of them you'll be spotting them in your bookstores, so you might as well get an advance notice about them now. This first one I don't have a sheet for, but I think it's a paperback that comes out in January. And we might have even seen it on this channel when it came out originally. This is Tom Clavin's biography of Wild Bill Hickok. And it's coming out in a trade paperback from St. Martin's. This is going to be $18, probably this month. They're timing it because Clavin has a new book that's coming out in the spring on the Battle at the OK Canal, I think. The Tombstone. The OK Canal. His new book is called Tombstone. And so he's a popular chronicler of the Old West. And I read this when it first came out, but I'm looking forward to reading it again. I really liked it. I think I might be developing a real sweet tooth for this author. I think I like the way he does things. I have a lot of fond memories of this book, so I'll be reading it again. And this is, even before his death, Wild Bill became a legend, with fiction sometimes supplanting fact in the stories that surfaced. The legend of Wild Bill has only grown since his death in 1876, when cowardly Jack McCall famously put a bullet through the back of his head during a card game. And that will be familiar to some of you, even if you've never read anything about Wild Bill Hickok. That'll be familiar to some of you from the first season of Deadwood. Wild Bill is magnificently portrayed in that first season. I agree with the showrunners that you couldn't possibly have had him around for any longer than one season. You really want to get rid of him. And also, I think the showrunners for Deadwood were using not only his larger-than-life status, because he, even at the end of his life as a soused alcoholic in Deadwood, you get in the show a lot of that blurring between what is true and what is not, even when we get the squalid moment of his death. But I think the showrunners wanted to haul him on in that first season and then get rid of him as a sign that this was a show that was going to move the Old West from the mythos and the folklore to very much the nitty-gritty of the real world. And of course, I'm assuming that all of you are Deadwood fans, so you will all attest they succeed marvelously in doing that. Then this next one is a paperback original that's coming out in May. So this is one of our spring releases. I hope they aren't all spring releases. That would make me look bad, wouldn't it? This is by Maggie Brooks, and this is called The Prisoner's Wife. And you have two people embracing each other in the tall grass, and in the background you can see what is clearly a German concentration camp. 75 years after Germany's World War II surrender to the Allied forces, former journalist and BBC television producer Maggie Brooks delivers a heart-wrenching story of love and its endurance in the face of overwhelming hardships. And the story is about the year is 1944, and Isabella is a Czech teenager whose family has been ripped apart by the war. With her father and older brother fighting with the resistance against the Nazis, Isabella's mother is left shorthanded to run the family farm as Isabella yearns to join the fight and set off for an adventure of her own. It's not long before such perilous fate comes her way. The Nazis supply several POWs to lend a hand with manual labor on the farm, and Isabella falls in love with Bill King, the handsome musician-turned-prisoner from England. Under cover of the night, the lovers marry and run away to support the rebel fighters, but they are captured by the Nazis and sent to a concentration camp. And they are sent to the same concentration camp because Isabella has disguised herself as a man. And her survival and their survival depends entirely in this new circumstance on her maintaining that disguise. So this comes out in May. It's I think, if I remember correctly from the publicity material, it's loosely based on the author's own family history. So it'd be at the very least be fascinating. And then this next one, oh God, is this another spring release? Oh, let's hope not. A lot of these are coming up, I promise. What is the date on this thing? I didn't have a New York phone book. Okay, January 21st. So this is right around the corner. And this actually ties in with a BookTube event that I'm happy to mention. This is The Sweet Indifference of the World by Peter Stamm, translated by Michael Hoffman. And it's coming out as a trade paperback original for $15 on January 21st. The author is a star. He's a literary star in Germany. Let's see here. He was shortlisted for the 2013 Man Booker International Prize, and he won a 2014 Friedrich Holdren Prize and in this novel he has created a literary Mobius strip told through the eyes of Christoph, a writer haunted by his past self. It's a slim, brilliant novel, Stamm at his best, that exists on the border of dream and reality, of memory and imagination. And the plot involves whether or not any of this is real. And if it's real, how often has it been real? Though they've never spoken before, Lena agrees to meet Christoph after receiving a cryptic note from him. As they wander the streets of Stockholm, she listens to his story, which is also somehow hers. 20 years ago, and yet also now, he loved a woman named Magdalena, who was an actress like Lena, with the same personality, looks, and past. Their breakup inspired him to write his first novel, which launched him into a success. Yet in its scenes, Lena impossibly recognizes the precise, intimate details of her own relationship with Chris, an aspiring writer. And she's wondering, of course, naturally, she's wondering, well, does that mean that there is some sort of imperative here, some sort of fate? And if so, does that mean I have to break up with Chris? Are we going to break up in order for him to become a success? And this is translated by Michael Hoffman, who has translated a million different things from the German. And the BookTube event that it coincides with is one that was created by Mel at Mel's Bookland Adventure. And she and Britta Boll are doing a challenge all throughout 2020 for all of us to read more German literature. It's actually, I'll leave a link to Britta's video. It's actually kind of funny. They break it up by the peaks of Germany and Austria. How many works of German literature will you read in 2020? Each is designated by each of these elevations, starting with the lowest point below sea level and going all the way to the highest point. And corresponding with numbers. There's a Goodreads group that I'm sure they would let you join, and there's a hashtag and everything. I'll leave links to both their videos down below. It's an incredibly worthwhile thing to do. To sort of keep an eye on your German literature. People have been doing TBRs for the German literature they plan on tackling throughout 2020. And when I saw the announcements, I'm still catching up on a lot of older BookTube videos that I missed while I was away. When I saw the announcement videos, my first thought was, well, I don't need to make a TBR because I'm hoping that the publishing world will supply me with German literature, and then we'll just see. We'll see what elevation I end up at the end of the year, because I will just get my hands on every piece of translated German literature that's out there for the 2020 year. Now, I might not stick to that. I realized when I was thinking about it how long it's been, for instance, since I read the stereotypical choice, which is Faust. It's been a long time since I did that. It's also been a long time, probably 15 years, maybe more than that, since I read Dr. Faustus by Thomas Mann. And it might be nice to read both of those together, and there isn't going to be a new translation of either one of them in 2020. So I will probably go afield for German literature, but I'm definitely going to start with this. This will be my start for that challenge. And I urge you all to try it as well. German literature is amazing. Use this, for instance, as an opportunity to read some Hermann Hesse if you want to, or you could combine it. The read more German literature reading challenge. You could combine that with Alan Moreton's reading Chunksters for Charity and read The Magic Mountain. Finally, read The Magic Mountain, or Buddenbrooks, or maybe some Heinrich Mann if you can find any. But anyway, then we move on. We move on to another April book. But I think all the rest of these are January. And this is a tricky one. This is going to be tricky. I will go into it it's more World War II fiction. This is 3 Hours in Paris by Cara Black. And it's got the clock on the cover like that. Nice design. And Cara Black might be familiar to some of you because she has written an enormous number of books. I wonder if they're listed in here. She has written an enormous murder mystery series set in every single, the Amulet Dark Mysteries. there's a murder set in every single neighborhood of Paris, every single area and nook and cranny of Paris. This is not part of that series. This is a standalone historical novel. For 20 years and 19 books, author Cara Black has delighted fans with the critically acclaimed Amy Leduc investigation set in Paris. The highly fashionable PI has provided legions of Francophiles with riveting armchair adventures throughout all the areas of the City of Light's darkest history. Okay, and also more than a few places to bargain hunt for haute couture. While Cara Black is in no way finished with Amy's story, there is another story she has long wanted to tell. Historians agree that after the Nazi war machine seized Paris, the Fuhrer spent a mere 3 hours touring the city before abruptly leaving. What remains unknown to this day is why his stay was so short. In 3 Hours in Paris, Cara Black uses this historical footnote to spring a riveting wartime thriller about an American sniper named Kate Reese and the aftermath of her failed attempt to assassinate Hitler. This takes the form of a hair-raising game of cat and mouse between Reese and the Nazi investigators that traverse occupied Paris and evokes the best of Frederick Forsyth and Richard Condon. And the reason that this is tricky is because I have read 6 or 7 of the Amy Leduc mysteries, and they are... their souffles have fallen. I did not like any of them at all. I'm not talking just the raw mechanics of the plot, although, oh my God, let's not tell Britta Bowler about that series, because, oh my God, she would tear her hair out. Even I could tell. I've never written a formal mystery novel in my life. Even I could tell that the plots are subpar. But it wasn't just that. It was also the whole reason for existence of that whole series is the atmosphere. It's to bring you into and bring alive the various neighborhoods and regions of the broader, greater Paris region. And I thought the series completely failed to do that. Completely failed. It felt like cribbing from a guidebook the whole time. I sensed in the books of that series, I didn't read all of that series, but I sensed in the books of that series writerly talent. And I'm hoping that what I get in 3 Hours in Paris is that writerly talent, but without any of what I consider to be that series' manifest failures. And I'm not alone in thinking that. I'm not the only antiquated, old-world, manual typewriter, literary dinosaur who thinks that way. I sent the first 4 or 5 of those Amy Leduc novels to Irma Heldman, the Open Letters doyen of mystery. She writes our mystery column, I think, once a month on Thursday. On the third Thursday of the month, I think, is the date that she commanded. No one at Open Letters tells Irma what to do. She once had her own publishing imprint, for Pete's sake, and reads mysteries and only mysteries, and is very open-minded and very flexible. I have known and worked with Irma for a long time, and even if an author badly disappoints her, she will usually give that author the benefit of the doubt when a new book comes out and say, okay, well, you missed a plate last time, honey, but you can try again now. but with Cara Black, he's, I think, the only author in the entire time that I've been dealing with Irma where I eventually got an email from her saying, please don't send me any more books by this author. That's astounding, and I hate to say it because I'm sure that this author has a rabid following of fans, but it perfectly parallels my own experience with her books. So I am really hoping that I don't think I can convince Irma to do this thing. There are limits. I don't think I can, but I am hoping that I will really like this book. I'm certainly going to go into it with that hope. Then we have some hardcovers. And the first one is long awaited. This is I think going to get noticed in a lot of places, probably for a lot of the wrong reasons, and I'm sanguine enough to hope that the author knows that. The author knows ahead of time that her book is going to get noticed for some of the wrong reasons. I think it's a terrible shame, but I'm hoping that the book is really good on its own. This is by Adrienne Miller, and it's called In the Land of Men. Beautiful cover, just beautiful. This is a memoir of her time in the publishing industry. Let me read you about it here. In 1997, at the tail end of the golden age of print journalism, Adrienne Miller arrived at Esquire, the magazine, Esquire, not only a male-dominated space, but in many ways the arbiter of what a modern male-dominated world should look like, as the first female literary editor in the magazine's storied history. She was 25 years old, starting her dream job, and one of her initial tasks was to work with David Foster Wallace, whose magnum opus, Infinite Jest, had just come out a year before, catapulting him into a bona fide literary celebrity. And this book is Miller's stunningly open and beautifully written memoir about coming of age in the rapidly changing world of the late 90s and her editorial, romantic, and intellectual relationship with David Foster Wallace. And that I think, is the wrong approach that a lot of people are going to take to this book. And I'm going to watch my colleagues in the reviewing world to see whether or not they pull the easiest and cheapest dipsy doodle in the world and start off their review of this book by saying, it would be really unfair to characterize this memoir, searing and insightful, liminal as it is, as merely one last memorial from David Foster Wallace's former girlfriend. And yet, and then go right on to do that. I want to see how many critics will do that. But a naive and idealistic 22-year-old from the Midwest, Adrienne Miller got her lucky break at another bastion of male privilege when she was hired as an editorial assistant at GQ magazine in the mid-90s. Even if its sensibilities were manifestly mid-century, the martinis, the powerful male egos, the unquestioned authority of kings, GQ still seemed like the red-hot center of the literary world. But the media landscape was changing, and the literary world was shifting as well, away from the great male narcissists, as she and David Foster Wallace would come to call them. Shrieking irony, since he was as narcissistic as any of them. And towards a new movement exemplified by McSweeney's and the work of David Foster Wallace. McSweeney's was founded by Dave Eggers, who's another great, what's the term? Great male narcissist, all in capital letters. Well, absolutely. If it applied to David Foster Wallace, it applies 10 times over to Dave Eggers. It's like the mote, the beam in your own eye and the mote in your neighbor's eye. So it comes to mind. After 3 years at GQ, Miller boldly put herself forward for the role of literary editor at Esquire. She got the job and was immediately reminded in direct and indirect ways that no matter what they accomplish, women are always underestimated. Agents told her she was unqualified for the job, and she was constantly confronted by the toxic patriarchal power structure of an old-school media company where everything from sexual harassment to drastically unequal pay were par for the course. And I know that it's going to sound awful, toxic YouTube manosphere of me, but I would be willing to bet that when we are told constantly confronted by the toxic patriarchal power structure of the old-school media company, I'd be willing to bet that in reality those confrontations happened at a rate of 1 a year, which is not constantly. The lie to In the Land of Men, the lie to this pub sheet, and again, I don't know what the book says, this is just the pub sheet, but the lie is given in the description of the book itself, where she is given a job at Esquire and then at GQ. so obviously, well, anyway, I can't wait to read it. I know that it's going to have a lot of hagiography about David Foster Wallace. I know that it's going to do that, and that's going to be tough to swallow. But this comes out in mid-February, and I think it's going to get a lot of attention. It's certainly going to get attention from me, that's for sure. Then this next one I've already read, and I want to recommend it to you. I went into it dreading the worst, but I was enormously pleasantly surprised. This is by Phil Stamper, and it's called The Gravity of Us. It's a YA novel about two young boys whose parents are part of a space program. So they are relocated wherever their parents happen to go, and there's an extremely perilous mission that they are left behind to wonder about their parents. This is, I think, Phil Stamper's debut. He grew up in a rural village near Dayton, Ohio, has a BA in music and an MA in publishing with creative writing, and unsurprisingly, a lot of student debt. Well, this book will change that, because this is going to sell. This comes out in, February 4th. This is going to sell like crazy. It's also going to be a movie. I know that it's going to be a movie, and the movie will be a hit. So he should get ready. This is our author, and he should get ready to kiss his student debt goodbye. He works for a major book publisher in New York City and lives in Brooklyn with his husband and their dog. And The Gravity of Us is his first novel, but he's no stranger to writing. His self-insert Legend of Zelda fan fiction came with a disclaimer from a 14-year-old author, and the disclaimer was, "Please, if you write a review, don't criticize my work." He has since become more open to critique, sort of. Well, I hate to break it to him, but I'm going to review this book. But I want to. The reason why I went into it a little bit uneasy is because of the gushing blurb from Becky Albertalli, who was one half of the author collaboration that perpetrated Maybe It's Us, last year's YA Boy Meets Boy book, probably with the same cover illustrator, and I thought it was just wretched. I thought that Maybe It's Us was just wretched, just awful. It was a collaboration. It was two authors, and both of them are writing their worst work instead of their best work. I've seen that happen with some collaborations, where sometimes the authors will just underwrite each other's weaknesses. I always prefer it when that's not the case, but I have noticed that when a literary collaboration is one in which both members are making each other better instead of worse, inevitably, the collaborators will opt for one pen name, for one fake pen name, instead of having both their names on the book. It's inevitably when they're racing to the bottom of how bad they each can be that they'll insist that both their names be on the book. Whether that happens in science fiction, fantasy, mystery, or in the case of Maybe It's Us, gay YA. Let me see here. Let me tell you a little bit about this, though. In this smart, heartwarming YA debut, perfect for fans of Becky Albertati and Adam Silvera, who were the perpetrators of that book. And that of course put my heart in my throat when I knew that, because I thought, oh God, is this going to be just as bad? Is this why we went through Stonewall to have absolutely awful gay YA? But I was dead wrong. This is fantastic. Two teens find love when their lives are uprooted by their parents' involvement in a NASA mission to Mars. Cal wants to be a journalist, and he's already well underway with almost 500,000 followers on social media and an upcoming internship at BuzzFeed. And he does live walk around news vlogs on his channel. News of the day, places to eat, or cool sights in New York, teen-related stories. He has a wonderful observation at the beginning of the book that he used to feel helpless when he looked at the news, until he started doing it himself. And that made it feel better. But a lot of those 500,000 followers of his are saying, well, the whole country's talking about this Mars mission. Why aren't you? Why aren't you giving us profiles of the astronauts? And there's a real good reason for it, because this is the last thing he wants to think about. While the entire nation desperate for any new information about the astronauts, Cal finds himself thrust in the middle of a media circus. Suddenly, his life is more like a reality TV show, with his constantly bickering parents struggling with their role as the perfect American family. Then Cal meets Leon, whose mother is another astronaut on the mission, and he finds himself falling head over heels and fast. They become an oasis for each other amidst the craziness of this whole experience. And as their relationship grows, so does the frenzy surrounding the Mars mission. And there is a 30-page segment towards the climax of this book that will have you just, what is the hackneyed YA phrase? Expelling a breath you didn't realize you were holding. It will have you holding your breath. There is a segment here that I don't know how many hands it went through, or maybe Phil Stamper is just a genius and did it all by himself. But one way or another, the emotional climax of this book is unbelievably well done. Just unbelievably well. I strongly recommend this book when it comes out. It's coming out soon enough. Then this next book came to me with a rip on the cover, but I fixed that with a little piece of tape. And it's one of these new technology books. This is by Peter Diamandis and Stephen Kotler, and it's called "The Future is Faster Than You Think," with shiny letters. How converging technologies are transforming business, industries, and our lives. Let's see here. Technology is accelerating far more quickly than anyone could have imagined, except for all the science fiction authors who did imagine exactly how quickly it would accelerate. During the next decade, we will experience more upheaval and create more wealth than we have in the past 100 years. In this gripping and insightful roadmap to our new future, the authors investigate how wave after wave of exponentially accelerating technologies, defined as any technology that doubles in power while dropping in price on a regular basis, will impact our daily lives and society as a whole. What happens as AI, robotics, virtual reality, and sensors crash into 3D printing, blockchain, and global gigabit networks? How will these convergences transform today's legacy industries? What will happen to the way we raise our kids, govern our nations, and care for our planet? And that last bit, care for our planet, made me wonder why climate change is not addressed here. Because the premise there, during the next decade, we will experience more upheaval and create more wealth than we have in the past 100 years. Most of that is only true if the world doesn't end, right? Or if large parts of the world don't end. And these incredible fires that have been raging all over Australia and that are raging still, devastating farmlands, homes, suburbs, and wildlife. Imagine if there was something like that happening on a comparable basis somewhere in the world all the time, or many places in the world all the time. That is the world that we're headed for in the next decade. So I would like to see a little bit more mention of solar panels becoming much cheaper and much more accessible, renewable energy and whatnot. It probably is possible for me to put, or not me myself, but a bunch of muscular teenagers, to put solar panels on the wall of this house that would generate all the power that the building needs. That's probably possible. And that's, anyway, that it's extrapolations like that. It's thinking like that that makes these books so interesting to me. So I will be gobbling this up. Did I mention when this comes out? This is January 28th, so late January. So these are, most of these are coming right up. And then this next one's going to work the old blood pressure. I'm going to read it, but it's going to work the old blood pressure. I'm determined to do these so that you don't have to. This comes out in January, but I don't have a specific date, I don't think. This is by Peter Newman, and it's called Bluster, Donald Trump's War on Terror. It's a short thing from the University of Oxford Press, and it makes as its central point that Donald Trump's bluster and his knee-jerk reactions to the world's terror organizations has made America and the rest of the world less safe, not more. This, of course, was written, proofread, and went to press before Soleimani was killed. And I'm not sure that death undercuts the author's thesis at all. In fact, according to most intelligence agency experts, it bolsters what he was saying. But I want to read you just a bit of this. Let's see here. While on the campaign trail, Donald Trump promised the American people that if elected, he would defeat terrorism. 3 years into the Trump administration, it is clear that the eradication of terrorism is still far off from the president's declared goal. In fact, though President Trump claims that counterterrorism is one of his greatest achievements, in reality he has made America less safe. In this book, Peter Newman, founder of the International Center for the Study of Radicalization, delivers an incisive investigation of Trump and American counterterrorism effort. He compellingly argues that Trump's short-term militaristic vision is detrimental to the overall health of the U.S. and has led not only to the deterioration of relationships with foreign partners, but has also shifted the tide of public perception of the U.S. as a multicultural haven. Trump's conflation of terrorism, immigration, and Islam has caused lasting damage to the very essence of America. And the book goes on from there. I don't know how much of it I'm going to agree with. I don't know whether I'm going to like the author's presentation or his bona fides. Generally speaking, this type of book is less reliable the closer any author gets to an independent think tank of any kind, any political persuasion. And this guy founded one, so no idea how that will work out. But I'll be reading it soon, and I will find out. So there you go. There are some new arrivals for you to work some havoc on your TBR. We have Bluster, which I don't expect any of you to put on your TBR. Then we have the future is faster than you think. About all the innovations that are coming right down the line, faster than we can predict. Then The Gravity of Us, Phil Stamper's debut novel. Go to your library, make sure they get it. Go to your bookstore and buy a copy. Let's do our best to eradicate this author's crippling student death as fast as possible, because this is a terrific book. And if it's an indication of what he's going to do for the rest of his career, then more power to him. Then In the Land of Men by Adrienne Miller, which is a story of her breaking into what I call the lad mags, into the stuffy, leather chair men's magazines, but also a story of her relationship with David Foster Wallace, which I think is going to get the premier amount of attention that the book gets, unfortunately. Then 3 Hours in Paris by Cara Black. This is a historical fiction thriller from an author of a long series of murder mysteries set in Paris. Some of you have probably read those. Then The Sweet Indifference of the World by Peter Stamm. This is a translation into English of a weird story in which a man tells a woman his own life story, which turns out to be hers, and she wonders, does this predict my future? Then The Prisoner's Wife by Maggie Brooks, World War II fiction, lovely cover. And Wild Bill by Tom Clavin. This is the paperback reprint of his life of Wild Bill Hickok that is coming out right before his big new hardcover history. Which I think we've seen on this channel. We haven't seen it on this channel. I'm sure that we will soon, and I will be sending it to Peg at the History Shelf right away as soon as I get a copy, so that she can get to work on a review of it. But anyway, that is new arrivals for today. I will probably have more bookish stuff to talk to you about, so I'll sign off for now. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.